Good evening, everyone. And I would request all of you to turn on your videos. Okay, great. First of all, I would like you to welcome to this panel discussion. Thank you for taking the time out to join us at the 2021 summit. And I would give brief introductions of the panelists, and then Amir, you can take over. So for all the audiences, the title of the panel is Implementing Digital First Policies at Every Stage of Healthcare Ecosystem and Promoting Industry-Wide Collaborations for Open Innovation. For this, the speakers are Dipen Kathrani, Vibhav Garg, and Mohammad Amil. So Mr. Kathrani is currently the head of R&D for Global Myopia, Beauty Contact Lens, and Asia Pacific and Japan for Johnson & Johnson Vision Care. Based in Singapore, he represents APG region in the Vision Care R&D leadership team. He is also responsible for leading J&J Vision's strategic myopia research collaboration program with Singapore National Eye Center. Next up is Mr. Vibhav Garg. He serves as the Director, Government Affairs Strategy, India Hub and Asian for Boston Scientific. He has extensive global experience of over 19 years in the areas of policy advocacy, brand management, regulatory and compliance, public affairs, corporate communications, and crisis management. He has been engaging with the state and federal governments of India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and other developing countries for various strategic healthcare initiatives and policy discussions with concerned stakeholders. Last but not the least, Mohammad Amil. He is currently working as the head of primary healthcare technology and innovations at PATH. He was previously working as a senior consultant healthcare technologies at the National Health Systems Resource Center, which was a WHO collaborating center for priority medical sciences and health technology policy. He got the privilege to represent India in the third WHO Global Forum on Medical Device Geneva and proposed the next forum in India in December 2018. Thank you so much for joining us, and over to you, Amir.
Thank you, Irfa, for that wonderful introduction, and also thanks on behalf of my co-panelists. So I've been given this privilege to moderate this session, and that too, I'm very glad to moderate to very nice industry colleagues that I know, and in fact, I can take the liberty of calling them friends as well. So hi, Vibhav, and within long time actually, but at least virtually we are getting to see each other. So
yes, connecting with both of you. Good to see you both.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So as we know, we would be discussing today implementing digital first policies at every stages of healthcare ecosystem and promoting industry-wide collaboration for innovations. So I have certain questions for both of you. I'll go one by one, and I understand Dipen has a conflicting arrangement, conflicting priorities, and he has to drop at 5:30. So let me put him on the spotlight right away then. So basically, Dipen, to begin with, I would want to like to understand from you the need for and importance of policies for support and regulations of digital health solutions and services in current scenario. What do you think? What is the biggest need for such regulations in current scenario?
Mohammed, thanks for the question and the opportunity, and thanks to the HITLAB team as well. I think first and foremost, let's go. The whole concept of policy and regulation is a very wide topic when we talk about health overall, and then in digital health, it's not only wide but it's also new. Fundamentally, when we are talking about anything related to healthcare and we bring the angle of digital to that, the one word which strikes all our minds is data. And as we look around the world, this is one aspect of digital health which is under tremendous evolution and also under a lot of debate. Who owns the data? Who owns, therefore, the overall disease pathway, the consumer journey through the healthcare cycle? Is it the patient? Is it the hospital and the doctor as the caregivers and caretakers? Or Is it owned by enablers who are party and stakeholders to the healthcare ecosystem? I think if you just even take a small slice of this, which is data, fundamentally, that itself opens up the door to start talking about policies and regulations. And when you start further digging deep into that, you start thinking about not just ownership of data, but you start talking about data privacy, data protection. GDPR has, as we all know, in the last 2 years has turned out to be big. And then anything and everything which you do in the digital health is going to be all about the patient, the consumer, and the physician journeys. And data is going to be an integral part of that. So to me, it's a vast topic, but if the starting point is data, and the starting point is defining regulations and policies around data.
That's a wonderful take on this question particularly. I'll come back to you on that. But before that, let me speak to Vibhav on this. And also, Vibhav, in addition to what just Biten said, wanted to understand from you what are the barriers and challenges you understand for implementing digital health frameworks in both conventional and modern healthcare setups. What are the biggest roadblocks that we see that we are seeing today in implementation of these? Vibhav.
Thanks, Amil. Good to see you and Bitten here again. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thanks. I have a bad throat, but I'll try to manage it with whatever voice I have left with. So I think digital first policies in a health word, as Bitten mentioned, is new, but as we all know, I think COVID has really accelerated the usage of digital tools and digital means and digital platforms, across the globe. What it has also done, I think, even before COVID, digital therapeutics was talked a lot, right? How do we really include not just the softwares that are enabling some of the technologies to bring out the results, but actually software being treated as the medical devices, right? Or maybe other way of looking at it. So even now we are talking about, I'm just hearing the speaker before our session. He was talking about digital therapeutics and the regulations around digital therapeutics. We all know that regulations follow innovations, right? That's a global phenomenon. But I think it is important to have a watch on which way are we progressing so that our regulations and our policies can really follow that and follow that effectively. That's very important. There are many geographies which have embraced digital therapeutics and digital means to deliver healthcare. And in fact, like NHS UK has adopted reimbursement for digital therapeutics. But I think if I talk particularly from Asia Pacific perspective, we are still exploring. Various governments in this region are still exploring to evaluate digital therapeutics, to regulate digital therapeutics, and even digital means to be able to deliver healthcare. So I think, in a nutshell, I would say that it's an emerging area, to be, and the different countries are trying to still evaluate, the policy framework to be built around this system, the regulatory framework to be built around this system. But I think I see still a long way to go before various governments and various geographies put a very, I would say, foolproof mechanism to be able to evaluate these technologies and therapeutics in the healthcare system across the globe.
Thanks, Vibhav. Thanks for your perspective. Let me ask the same thing actually to Biten so that we have a perspective from him himself. Biten, you did mention about the need and importance of such policies, but what do you think are the barriers and challenges in implementing such frameworks in both conventional setup as well as the modern ones? Biten?
Yeah, so I think I broadly agree with everything Vibhav just mentioned, right? At the topmost level, I think what is going to be important is to understand whether when we talk about digital health, what are we talking about? Are we talking about digital health as an enabler, or are we talking about digital health as an active therapeutic active ingredient of solving a disease or achieving a clinical outcome or efficacy, right? And depending on broadly where this in these two aspects digital lies, the challenges can be very, very different. Point number two, I think we can all agree that technology itself is not a problem for digital. It's digital as a technology has been widely proven. Whether it's developing apps, whether it's building connected devices, whether it's building cloud computing technologies, whether it's data storage and data lakes, technology itself has been widely proven. But its implementation in a business model is, I think, the other big challenge. Today, digital, for some reason, in people's mindset means, like, when you go to the internet, you almost assume that everything on the internet is free. So the question here is, what value is digital bringing to the stakeholders, to your business, to the physicians, to the patients, to policymakers, to public health, right? And therefore, who is going to pay for this? And is it an enabler, or is it actually improving outcomes or efficacy? And unless you can significantly show either efficiency, whether it's in terms of time, in terms of utilization of healthcare resources, whether it's reducing cost of healthcare, or you can show clinical outcome related benefits, you're going to have a big financial and a business model challenge on healthcare. So to me, that is one big challenge, apart from some of the regulatory and data aspects we spoke earlier.
Right. No, thanks, Vitin. And I also think that this pandemic has also tried to resolve a lot of hiccups that people had in actually start using some of the digital tools. And you must be, and all of us know that this has actually accelerated the acceptance of digital tools in the healthcare settings. Vitin, wanted to get your views also on what do you think, is this a temporary wave or an initiation of a permanent shift? And if whatever you think, why do you think so? So yeah, thanks.
I think the stakeholders who have benefited from digital technologies during the pandemic, I believe there's going to be stickiness, and because they have tasted success out of it, they've seen the benefits out of it, and it will definitely stick, but not only stick, but it'll actually expand. And then as a subset of disease, the stakeholders see the benefits, I think it will start rubbing off. Question always is going to be how fast will it explode, right? I'll give you a very simple example, which we saw in our own business. As was mentioned in my introduction, I currently lead R&D for the vision business of J&J. One of the products which we make is disposable contact lenses. During the pandemic, in many countries, patients were not willing to go out of the house. So if you're not going out of the house, you're not getting your eye checkups done, and your annual eye checkup is due, how do you make contact lenses available to the consumers? It becomes a dilemma for a responsible medical device company. For those wearing spectacles, it is okay. Many of us who wear spectacles don't go and get our eyes checked up until we start feeling blurry vision. But in the contact lens industry, it's mandatory that you have an annual eye checkup, right? So enabling remote, digital enabled eye health checkups has become suddenly the norm. A lot of companies are starting to offer this. A lot of capital equipment companies who were purely capital equipment sellers are now starting to offer services. And they have embraced this completely new business model as a solutions company rather than just an equipment company. In our own business as disposable contact lenses, what we realized is when the stores were shut, the optometrists and the retail outlets, when they were shut in many countries, the spectacle customers were not coming back. That means they were not going to make money. But disposable contact lenses, their businesses go on. All they needed was regulatory approval that manufacturers like us could ship the lenses to their homes rather than shipping them to the store and the patient would come and pick it up. Pre-pandemic, there was a huge resistance from physicians because they thought they would lose connect with the patients. Regulators also were not willing to change regulations because they wanted they wanted doctors and physicians to be gatekeepers so that good eye care was provided. But everyone had to learn a new way of servicing the consumer and the clinical need by enabling a fast-paced change in regulations so that the patients could place an order online, would be approved by a doctor through digital technologies, but the lenses would come directly at the doorstep of the patient rather than going through the doctor. The workflow still was controlled by the physician so that clinical compliance was maintained, but the product flow did not have to follow the same pathway.
Thanks, Vidyan. These were some very interesting examples. Though I do wear spectacles very closely related to people who would use contact lenses, but wasn't aware of such things happening in the background with regulators and physicians. That's quite interesting. Vibhav, a similar question to you, your thoughts on whether this is a temporary wave of a shift in the acceptability of digital tools through pandemic, or you think this is sort of a permanent shift that we are seeing? So Vibhav, over to you.
No, thanks, Amil. And I, as Bitin mentioned, I think he just touched up very important contours of utilization of digital technologies. And I think I am in alignment with those thought processes that, wherever the stakeholders of the entire healthcare ecosystem have seen value in the digital, means of providing care, they'll stick to it. And I'll again give a couple of more examples. And wherever people have felt that, okay, yeah, a wave came in and we were all shut and there was a platform that we could utilize to provide care. And once it is opened up, anyways, it is opening up now in many countries. Again, we are back to the way that we have been providing care. I think, people will come back to older ways to provide care. And I think the stickiness will remain into pockets of excellence where the digital has provided value in last couple of years, I would say. And I can give you an example of like remote care management, right? You have a lot of cardiac technologies that we also deal in, wherein, the patient having a pacemaker sitting somewhere else and a programmer sitting somewhere else, and you are able to program the device using remote care tools, right? I mean, the idea there remains is that that's a value. When the people were not coming out, they were feeling challenges sitting at home with the pacemaker. They could contact the programmer on phone. The programmer was able to sort of program the whole device sitting at maybe 3,000 kilometers in different part of the countries, basically, right? So I think there the value was seen, and I'm sure they'll continue. Other areas where people, telemedicine, all of us know, the figure that we see is, I don't know how many times it has grown pre-pandemic and now in pandemic and post-pandemic as well. And then again, everyone has seen a value in this. Sitting at home, if I can get access to a well-qualified physician, nothing like it, right? So I think those kind of things will stay back, will remain there. But then other areas where we could, where we saw a sudden surge in areas may not continue because people are coming back to hospitals. And again, giving examples, we saw elective surgeries were like postponed like anything during COVID, right? And suddenly we saw a surge coming when the hospitals were opened up, the cases were down, we came back. So some of those things, which are, I would say, which are not digital connect, which are not digitally enabled, right? Obviously will not sustain along, and will have to continue with the older way of giving care. But yes, there are areas which will remain as they are, and they will grow faster than we expected, because of digital means. The only thing is, as again, I'm repeating myself, but again, I would like to reinforce that I think the policymakers and the regulators will have to work very, very hard and very, very fast to enable these surges in adoption of these technologies. That's what we need to do together as industry and maybe governments of different countries. Thanks.
In fact, Mohammed, one thing which I probably did not touch base on earlier, and if you don't mind, I can take 30 seconds to just bring up another point of view here, which is yet another way to slice, how well digital will grow and get adopted is also looking at aspects of healthcare which are moving towards consumerization. There are a lot more, just like in the 90s, we saw a movement where a lot of procedures, surgeries moved from tertiary care hospitals to, day clinics and nursing homes. You're seeing that wave now getting accelerated with digital in the last 5+ years, where things are moving into the hands of the consumer, and I literally say in the hands of the consumer and or into their homes, right? Whether it's chronic disease monitoring, whether it's therapy control, right? Boston Scientific has a lot of products which are class 3 implantable devices, which have moved into, which were totally earlier programmed only by physicians. Today, certain controls are being provided to patients to take care of them. Eye care, as I mentioned, right? So depending on the severity of the disease, whether it's an acute versus a chronic care disease, and how much patient enablement can happen, I think the other flip side of the of digital health is consumerization of health, and these two are going to go hand in hand and support each other to grow bigger. As more digital gets adopted, you'll see more consumerization, and as you see more consumerization of healthcare, you'll see more digital enablement happen.
That's an important relation that you've told within. Also, would you want to touch specifically upon what have different stakeholders played their role in basically bringing about this shift in the digital and embracing new models? So different stakeholders, be it the government agencies like the regulators you very nicely mentioned, or the academia, or the hospitals, or the NGOs, or the corporate, or the industry players. Any specific roles that you would want to touch upon in this, bringing about this shift in digital health acceptance?
I think all stakeholders are going to play a critical role, but like many other aspects of how digital has touched our life and other consumer aspects, the pull is going to come from the consumers or the patients. The enablement is going to come from not just the technology itself, but from mostly reimbursement or insurance companies and from governments and policymakers. And, for example, there is still a lot of debate whether home care and as a concept enabled by digital should be reimbursed or otherwise, right? So although some countries may have better policies for digital, the adoption may not be as fast, not because the policy is not right, but reimbursement might become a challenge. So reimbursement and insurance is also going to play a big role. And I think Vibhav's, with his expertise, has covered a lot on the policy and the regulation side. I don't have to talk too much about that. But again, the only point I'd make there is when we talk about policy and digital health, it's at a completely different level. When we talk about medtech and pharma, we talk about policy in terms of health policies. Here it's going to be health policies plus digital policies, plus reimbursement policies, plus data policies, plus global data policies like GDPR, so local and global. So policies are going to be a big, big part of it, and there are different slices to that.
Thanks, Biten, and much appreciated. Vibhav, almost a similar thing. You did touch about the policy and the regulators. Any role of any other important stakeholder that you would want to specifically mention here, who've been instrumental in bringing about this paradigm shift in the acceptance of digital health in the pandemic time?
I think yes. I mean, as we heard from Bitin, I mean, policymakers and regulators will play a role. But I said, I mean, this is a very new area that the world has been introduced to, right? Especially in the last 1.5 to 2 years. But I think let's not forget the physician community who has adopted these things, and the stakeholders who adopted, whether it is technicians, whether it is physicians, whether it is nursing staff. I still remember those sites where doctors were finding it difficult to use computers to be able to prescribe, right? These e-prescriptions and all. But now they are able to, they are seeing the patients online, they are prescribing online, they are diagnosing online. I mean, so everything is happening online, right? Telemedicine particularly. And I'm also wanting to touch here, Amil, the word that is there, the title and the theme is the entire healthcare ecosystem. So if we go little upstream from a tertiary care, which is like primary care side of it, right? Your PHCs, your healthcare wellness centers, and so on and so forth. They are the digital platform have completely revamped the way the care was delivered, right? I don't remember seeing any health and wellness centers open. Tertiary care were open because COVID patients were there, but health and wellness centers didn't have much of capabilities to be able to admit a COVID patient. But the doctors who were associated with PHCs were able to utilize their smartphones to be able to cater, to be able to provide that care to the patients, right? In terms of initial stages, fever and so on and so forth. So I think adoption, I would say, was a big theme for me during COVID and just before COVID as well. I think the second set of stakeholders, I would say, is also the companies like ours, right? I mean, people got really together to be able to do the innovations which are really meaningful at that point in time, which are able to a lot of companies came out with the solutions which they never came out before, and I'm not just talking about digital solutions, but I think also beyond that, companies got together to bring out solutions. I can give you an example that what Boston did during COVID was coming out with something called Coventer. It's like a manual succedator, right? Now we collaborated with academia, we collaborated with other companies, and we came out with this, and it was supplied across the globe. In the setup where the ventilators were not enough, so this was at least a standby device for the patients who were really suffering from tough breathing, hard breathing, basically, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, I think I don't see any stakeholder in the entire healthcare ecosystem who was not impacted or who did not impact the entire adoption or the entire evolution of digital therapeutics or digital means of providing care, essentially, Amil. But then at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for it, right? Either the patient has to pay for it, or the system has to pay for it, or the insurance has to pay for it. And I think that's where the awareness, that's where the evolution of these things is equally important with the evolution of these technologies. That would be my thought process here. Thank you.
And that's another reason why that consumerization aspect angle is very important, right? Wherever a patient is willing to pay for it, adoption will be faster. So you don't have to go through getting stakeholders on board.
Oh, thanks. And my next question also, and perhaps the last question of the panel, is very much related to the importance of different stakeholders. Rather, the question is on ecosystem-wide collaborations and open innovations for basically streamlining the digital transformation that we are talking now, and leveraging it to make healthcare more accessible, affordable, and valuable. Because we know, unless the whole ecosystem is streamlined, working in silos with digital health is not going to help. So just wanted to understand first from you, Bitin, and then perhaps Vibhav, on what are your thoughts on this ecosystem-wide collaborations. Within, over to you. Thanks.
I think it's that is going to be the biggest enabler, right? Everyone trying to build all the infrastructure on their own and create closed gateways on digital health is not going to have a big payback, particularly when everybody's still trying to figure out the business model around it. So you are going to, and if you see, which is why some of the challenges to new models are actually being tried out by non-healthcare tech companies, because they have already very successfully demonstrated how to work in a common shared ecosystem, shared platforms. And they are the ones who are now trying to use those platforms to add services across the board, which now include healthcare. So ecosystem, and not just ecosystem, but shared ecosystem is going to be a critical enabler to the success of healthcare. And the current innovators, companies, product companies will have to learn to work with this shared ecosystem, right? Unlike most of the products today are more proprietary, because the medtech world has succeeded because of proprietaryship around IP. I'm not saying IP is not important. I'm not saying IP will not be generated and created in the future, but it'll be done in a very different way.
Thanks, Miten. That's
Vibhav, if you don't mind, this is a time when I will have to drop off. I sincerely apologize for this, but it's been a pleasure to reconnect with both of you. And thank you, HITLAB team.
thanks,
Pleasure.
Miten. Your insights were really helpful and much appreciated. Thank you. We'll continue our conversation with Vibhav.
Sure, Amil.
So Vibhav, same question to you. The ecosystem-wide approach, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So as I mentioned, just a few minutes back, Amil, I think open innovation to me will be the key in the times to come, right? Because, I think what is going to be more important, for regions like Asia Pacific, particularly where, just the two countries has the huge populations within themselves and put together, also carry, the patient load, which is global burden. I think it is important that open innovation will contribute to the better access as well, right? Because ultimately, as Bitin was mentioning, while patented and copyrighted innovation have their own role to play, because the companies are investing heavily. We as Boston Scientific invest almost 10% of our revenue into R&D, which is not trivial to me, right? But I think beyond that, it is important to really adopt and then create that ecosystem of open innovation, so that the access become faster and the companies will come forward, will work on those innovations, will create products around them, and will really put into the healthcare domain for the patient benefit at the end of the day. And I think another important area in open innovation is the collaboration. And again, let me go back to COVID as an example. In India, we saw when the manufacturing, for ventilators was really limited for medical device companies, we saw automobile companies coming and freeing their manufacturing line to actually manufacture ventilators, right? I mean, I'm not getting into the good, bad, ugly side of it, or quality side of it, but ultimately, end of the day, that's the innovation we're talking about. People were making their designs open. We actually at Boston, we also made the Coventer design open, put it into the public domain for manufacturers to come forward, take it up and start manufacturing that, basically, right? So I think open innovation and collaboration to me will go hand in hand going forward, and that's what will provide better access, faster access to the technologies, to the innovations coming across the globe. That would be my vision around open innovation, the collaboration.
Thanks. This is helpful. And before I close, I see some of the questions from the audiences in the chat. There are two, and what I'll do is I'll club both of these and put across so that it's easier for you to respond both maybe there could be an overlap as well. So one is what factors limit or obstruct open innovations in healthcare in countries like India? So one is obviously about the bottlenecks, which we did briefly talk about, but then, okay. And the second question is on digital transformation. How can they be made more cost effective for all stakeholders, or justified as per cost and value trade-off that they see? So yeah, cost effectiveness also I see is an area of interest for you. So, thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amir, for those were very interesting questions. Let me take one. Let me take them one by one. I think the first question you talked about the challenges beyond what we discussed, right, in the open innovation. So I think, see, if you see India, and that was particularly in the context to India. So India, as all of us know, is a heavily out-of-pocket market. Healthcare market is very significantly out of pocket. Almost 70% is out-of-pocket market, and I think it's good and bad both. I would say good because the power of buying an innovative product is still in patient's hand. Bad because at times when the innovation is significantly, in deep innovation, it's a radical innovation. Obviously, it needs support by reimbursement system of the country, which we don't have largely. But I think the schemes like PMJ, schemes like CGHS are making it possible to include innovations in them. They are very open schemes, and I think that's the challenge I see, that open innovations. How do we really create systems around where the adoption and uptake of open innovation is easier in the country? We have policies around them, but we need maybe stronger policies. Okay, I'm sorry for that. I don't know what happens suddenly, but I don't know until where you heard me. But I was talking about the major challenges in the open innovation uptake in the country was obviously the policy framework around the uptake of open innovation. Second, I was talking about the reimbursement framework around open innovations, particularly in healthcare. And third, I was talking about, mainly into the collaboration between the industry to take up those open innovation in healthcare and create products around it to be able to, provide the innovative technologies, in the healthcare sector in various therapeutic areas. I mean, so that was my response to the first question. And would you mind repeating the second question again, Amir?
Yeah, so the second question was, how can we make digital interventions more cost effective and value for money?
Sure. I think this question is little before time, I would say, because we are still struggling, as an ecosystem to be able to value digital therapeutics or digital means of providing care. I mean, as I said, I gave an example of remote care. Now, remote care is like, as I mentioned, about programming of a remote of a technology, or similar way, a remote care management in terms of diagnostics. Now, these are areas which are which are providing value beyond providing that actual care to the patient, right? So, for example, if I program a pacemaker from a 3,000 kilometer, obviously the patient will get the benefit of the pacemaker. But that value add that I did through a remote care or through a remote programming, now how do I assign a value to that, right? I think that's very important. And I think that's where the reimbursement agencies across the world are struggling to provide a number to that care. I think we are working on that. A lot of work is going on in terms of how do we assign value. We are doing evaluations through there's a lot of HTAs are going on remote care technology, remote care management. So I think when it comes to cost effectiveness, I don't see that still we are at a stage where we are able to say that digital therapeutics is very costly, right? So you talk about cost effectiveness when you see something delivered very costly, and you say, okay, what are the cost effective model of delivering digital care or care through digital means? So I think we are yet to reach that stage where we are to see the cost is very high. And any which ways, if you see the national digital health mission that we have, or now which is called Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, I think is providing or is facilitating so much of means to be able to provide healthcare. It's an open platform, built on open technologies. Companies are free to host their solution on that. Yeah, so I was just mentioning that because of Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, the basic architecture of hosting a solution has been taken care, which is the cost for any company, right? If I'm a startup, I have a digital solution for healthcare, I will look for a platform where I can host my solution to be able to provide to my consumers, which is patients or the physicians. And I think once that cost has been taken care, I don't think my solution is going to be very, very costly. And through Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, I think that cost has been taken care from a provider perspective. And therefore, if it is take care of the provider perspective, at a user perspective, it will be anyways very cost effective, to my opinion, Amil. But anyways, the idea is that how do we still, it's an evolving area. We need to wait and watch and create a sort of parallel system of advocacy, parallel system of policies for advocacies, for regulations, for reimbursement, for pricing, and so on and so forth, which is yet to happen for all of us. But I think we are all on the same page here that we need these areas to be addressed in digital means of providing healthcare.
No, thanks, Vibhav. That's an important perspective. And I think whosoever talking about cost effectiveness may be comparing digital intervention compared to nothing. And then obviously, if you introduce and you think it will cost you. So I think this was a wonderful session on implementing digital first policies at every stage of the healthcare ecosystem and promoting industry-wide collaborations for open innovations. We spoke about need for policies. We spoke about barriers and challenges. We spoke about the impact of pandemic and acceptance of digital solutions. We spoke about different stakeholders and the idea of ecosystem-wide collaborations. And you were very kind enough to take up few questions from the audiences in the chat as well. So with this, I'll call this panel session a close. We'll request audience to join at 6. We'll give you back 12 minutes. Rather, I'll pass it back to Irfa before that. But one sort of an personal achievement for me, I was on field and I was able to park the car on a service lane and moderate this session. I think that's another thing that digital health has, digital tools have enabled us to communicate so nicely without any such challenges. So, and it's quite dark. I was just using my mobile phone's light to just illuminate myself, and that's also almost down. So yeah, back to you, Irfa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There was one more speaker who had taken the session yesterday in the car parking itself. So it has been quite nice that ways. But again, I would like to thank you, Mr. Garg, and Biten as well, though he's not here, and Amil for, moderating the panel so nicely. So it was great hearing all your insights, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Irfa, for inviting us and giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.